Sergeant Barrett had been standing post at the East Gallery entrance for 3 hours when he heard the sound that would change everything. Not a scream, not a shout, something worse. The kind of silence that follows impact, the kind that makes every guard within 50 feet freeze and listen harder. He turned his head just slightly, maintaining protocol, but his eyes tracked the corridor. 30 yards away, near the family drawing room, Prince Louis was on the floor. The 7-year-old wasn't crying. He was staring up at someone with a look Barrett had seen before, but never on a child's face. Not confusion, not surprise, fear. Standing over him was Camilla, the Queen Consort. Her hand was still raised. Barrett's training kicked in before his mind could fully process what he'd just witnessed. 22 years in the Coldstream Guards, 14 years in royal protection. He'd trained for terrorist attacks, armed intrusions, medical emergencies, fires. Nobody had ever trained him for this. His radio was already in his hand, thumb hovering over the transmit button, when he saw movement from the opposite corridor. Princess Anne. She was walking toward the scene with the kind of controlled speed that only comes from military discipline. Her face was stone. Her eyes were locked on Camilla. Barrett made a decision. He pressed the button. His voice was calm, professional, the kind of calm that actually means everything is about to explode. All stations, code amber in the East Wing. Request immediate senior presence at the family drawing room. Repeat, code amber. Code amber, incident involving a principal. He didn't say who. He didn't have to. Within seconds, every guard in Buckingham Palace would converge on this corridor. But before we go further, if you're watching Royal Guard Files for these untold stories from inside the palace, hit that subscribe button now. Drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We share a new story every single day. Now, back to what happened in that corridor, because what Princess Anne did next would send shockwaves through the entire royal household. Barrett started moving, not running. Running creates panic. But his pace was deliberate, closing the distance between himself and the scene unfolding 30 yards away. Louis was getting to his feet slowly, one hand pressed against his cheek. The skin was already showing red. Barrett could see it even from this distance. The boy's lower lip was trembling, but he wasn't crying. He was trying not to cry. 7 years old and already trained to keep composure. It made Barrett's chest tighten. Camilla was speaking. Her voice was low, measured, the kind of tone that sounds reasonable to anyone not close enough to hear the actual words. You need to learn respect, young man. Your grandmother would never have tolerated such behavior. Louis didn't respond. He was looking past her now, toward Princess Anne, who had closed the distance to less than 15 feet. Anne's voice cut through the corridor like a blade. Step away from him. Not a request, a command. The kind of voice that had ordered cavalry units, inspected troops, represented the crown in every corner of the Commonwealth. Camilla turned. For just a moment, her mask slipped. Barrett saw it, the flash of something cold and calculating behind her eyes. Then the mask was back, and she was smiling. Anne, I was just correcting. I said step away from him. Anne moved between Camilla and Louis without breaking eye contact with the Queen Consort. Her body language was textbook protective positioning. Barrett had seen it 1,000 times in training scenarios. Create a barrier, establish dominance, control the space. Anne did it naturally, instinctively. Louis, go to your mother, now. The boy moved immediately, walking quickly, but not running toward the far door, where Barrett could now see Catherine, the Princess of Wales, emerging from the morning room. Kate's face was pale. She'd heard something. Maybe Louis's initial cry, maybe the sound of the slap itself. Her eyes went straight to her son's face, to the red mark blooming across his cheek, and Barrett saw her entire body tense. Camilla was still smiling. You're overreacting, Anne. The child was being insolent. Someone needs to teach him proper. You struck a child. Anne's voice hadn't risen. It didn't need to. A 7-year-old child under the protection of this household. Barrett was close enough now to see Camilla's expression shift. The smile was gone. What replaced it was something Barrett would later struggle to describe in his official report. It wasn't anger, it was certainty, the absolute conviction that she was untouchable. I am the Queen Consort. I will not be spoken to in this manner by Sergeant Barrett. Anne didn't turn, didn't take her eyes off Camilla. Place the Queen Consort under palace detention. She is not to leave this wing or communicate with anyone until we sort this out. The corridor went completely silent. Barrett felt his heart hammering against his ribs, but his voice came out steady, professional. Ma'am, Ma'am, I need to clarify the authority for... I am giving you a direct order. Anne turned to face him now, and Barrett saw something in her eyes that made him stand straighter. This wasn't anger. This was cold, calculated determination. Under royal protection protocols, any threat to a principal requires immediate containment. You witnessed an assault on Prince Louis. I am invoking emergency authority as a senior member of the royal family and a councillor of state. Do you understand your orders, Sergeant? Barrett's mind was racing through regulations, protocols, chains of command. Camilla was the Queen Consort. Anne was the Princess Royal. In the line of succession, Anne actually ranked below Camilla in terms of courtesy, but as a councillor of state, she had the authority to act on behalf of the sovereign in certain circumstances. Was this one of them? If he refused, he could be relieved of duty. If he complied, he could be starting a constitutional crisis. He looked at Louis. The boy was in his mother's arms now, trying to be brave, but tears were finally sliding down his cheeks. That red mark on his face, the handprint, clear as day. Barrett made his choice. Understood, ma'am. Queen Consort, I'm going to have to ask you to accompany me to the East Wing's security office. This is a temporary measure while we establish the facts of the incident. Camilla's face transformed. The mask was completely gone now. What Barrett saw was pure rage, barely contained beneath a veneer of royal composure. You cannot be serious. Do you have any idea who I am? Who my husband is? I do, ma'am. Barrett kept his voice even, respectful, but firm. I'm following a direct order from a senior royal. I'm asking you to cooperate. 3 more guards had arrived. Mitchell and Wright from the South Wing, Vale from the State Apartments. They formed up beside Barrett without being told, their presence a silent declaration. This was happening. Camilla looked at them, then back at Anne, and Barrett saw her recalculate. She was outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and somewhere in the back of her mind, she had to know that every second she argued, she looked more guilty. This is absurd, she said finally. Her voice was ice. You will all regret this, every single one of you. But she started walking. Barrett fell into step beside her, Mitchell and Wright flanking them. Vale stayed with Princess Anne. The walk to the East Wing security office felt like miles. They passed staff members who immediately looked away, suddenly fascinated by the carpet or the walls, or absolutely anything except the sight of the Queen Consort being escorted by palace guards. Barrett could hear Camilla's breathing, controlled, measured, but underneath it, he could hear the fury building. You're making a mistake, she said quietly. Not to Barrett, to no one in particular. Anne has always been jealous, always. She couldn't stand that Charles chose me, couldn't stand that I became Queen Consort while she remained a mere princess. Barrett didn't respond. Engaging was the worst thing he could do right now. But Camilla wasn't finished. That child is spoiled, entitled. He speaks to adults with no respect whatsoever. Someone needed to correct him. His parents certainly won't. William and Catherine let those children run wild. Mitchell's jaw tightened. Barrett could see it in his peripheral vision. They both had children. They both knew what they'd seen. A grown woman striking a 7-year-old hard enough to leave a mark. There was no correction in that. There was only violence. They reached the security office. It was a small room, tastefully decorated but fundamentally functional. Desk, chairs, monitoring equipment, communications gear. Barrett held the door open. "Ma'am, if you'll wait inside, we'll need to take formal statements from everyone involved." Camilla stopped in the doorway. She turned to face him, and her expression had shifted again. This time, it was calculating, almost curious. "What's your name, Sergeant?" "Barrett, ma'am." "Barrett." She said it slowly, like she was committing it to memory. "I hope you have family who don't depend on your income, because when Charles hears about this, you'll be out of the guards before sunset." She stepped inside. The door closed. Barrett exhaled slowly. His hands were shaking slightly. He clenched them into fists until they steadied. Mitchell was already on the radio, calling for a senior officer. Wright was positioned outside the door, standing guard over the Queen Consort, like she was any other detainee. The absurdity of it hit Barrett like a wave, but he pushed it down. There would be time to process later. Right now, he needed to document everything exactly as it happened. His radio crackled. "Barrett, this is Commander Thornton. I'm en route to your position. Do not, I repeat, do not proceed with any formal detention protocols until I arrive. Acknowledge." "Acknowledged, sir. Standing by." 5 minutes later, Commander Thornton arrived like a storm front. He was a 28-year veteran, a man who'd served in the Falklands, Northern Ireland, 2 tours in Afghanistan. Barrett had never seen him look uncertain, until now. Thornton pulled him aside, away from the security office door. "Tell me exactly what you saw. Every detail. Don't interpret. Just facts." Barrett did. Thornton's face grew progressively more grave. When Barrett finished, Thornton was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Princess Anne is in the East Gallery with the Prince and Princess of Wales. She wants your statement personally. Come with me." They walked back through the corridors Barrett had just traversed. Staff members were disappearing into side rooms now, getting out of the way of whatever storm was building. When they reached the East Gallery, Princess Anne was standing by the window. Louis was sitting on a settee with Kate, an ice pack pressed gently against his cheek. William was on the phone, his voice low and intense. He glanced up when Barrett entered, nodded once, then turned back to his conversation. Anne approached Barrett directly. "Sergeant, I need you to tell me exactly what you witnessed. From the beginning, leave nothing out." Barrett repeated his account. Anne's expression didn't change, but her eyes grew harder with every sentence. When he finished, she turned to Kate. "May I see Louis's face?" Kate gently removed the ice pack. The red mark had darkened to an angry purple red, the clear outline of fingers visible across the boy's cheek. Anne knelt down in front of Louis, bringing herself to his eye level. Her voice, when she spoke, was gentler than Barrett had ever heard it. "Louis, I need you to tell me what happened before Sergeant Barrett arrived. Can you do that for me?" Louis nodded. His voice was small but steady. "I was walking to find Mummy. Mrs. Camilla stopped me. She said I needed to address her properly. I said, 'Good afternoon, Your Majesty.' But I guess I forgot to bow. I was in a hurry. She got really angry. She said I was rude and disrespectful, and that I needed to learn my place." He paused, his lip trembling again. "Then she hit me. I fell down." Kate's hand tightened on her son's shoulder. William had finished his phone call and was standing very still, his face unreadable. But Barrett knew that look. He'd seen it in combat. That was controlled fury, held in check by sheer force of will. Anne stood. She looked at Thornton. "Commander, I want a full investigation. Interview every staff member in the East Wing. Check the security cameras. Document Prince Louis's injury with photographs. I want this done by the book. Every protocol followed to the letter." Thornton nodded. "Ma'am, I should inform you that this situation is unprecedented. The Queen Consort can be held accountable like anyone else in this household." Anne's voice was flat, final. "If she struck a child, there will be consequences. I don't care what her title is." Barrett thought about what was happening in that small security office. Camilla, waiting, probably confident that her status would protect her, that Charles would intervene, shut this down, make it disappear. He wondered if she understood yet that this was different, that Princess Anne wasn't backing down. William spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet, but it carried absolute authority. "I've just spoken with my father. He's cutting short his engagement in Scotland. He'll be here within 3 hours." He looked at Anne. "He's not pleased about the detention order." "I didn't expect him to be," Anne replied, "but I stand by it, and I'll answer to him when he arrives." Barrett realized with a sudden clarity that this was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. What happened in the next few hours would ripple through the royal family in ways none of them could fully predict. And he was right in the center of it, a witness to something that could reshape the entire hierarchy of the monarchy. But he didn't know yet just how deep this went. He didn't know about the other incidents. The pattern that was about to emerge. The secrets that were waiting to surface. That discovery was still ahead of him. And when it came, everything would change. The security camera footage arrived 20 minutes later. Commander Thornton set up the monitor in a private office, away from Louis. Barrett stood beside Princess Anne, William, and Kate as Thornton pulled up the timestamp from 3:30 that afternoon. The angle showed the corridor from above, a wide view that captured the family drawing room entrance and about 20 feet of hallway in each direction. Louis appeared first, walking at that particular pace children use when they're not quite running, but definitely hurrying. He rounded the corner near the Chinese vases, heading toward the morning room where Kate had been. Then Camilla entered the frame from the opposite direction. She saw Louis, stopped, said something. The boy stopped too, turned to face her. His mouth moved. He was speaking, probably that greeting he'd mentioned. "Good afternoon, Your Majesty." Camilla's expression was visible, even on the grainy footage. Her face hardened. She stepped closer to Louis, said something else. The boy's posture changed, became smaller, more uncertain. He glanced toward the morning room, like he was calculating whether he could just leave. Camilla's hand shot out. She grabbed his shoulder, spun him back to face her. Kate made a sound in her throat. William's hand found hers. On the screen, Camilla was still speaking. Louis was shaking his head now, not defiantly, apologetically, trying to explain something. Camilla's face twisted. There was no other word for it. Pure contempt. Her hand came up fast and struck Louis across the face with enough force that his head snapped to the side. He stumbled, fell, landed hard on the marble floor. Camilla stood over him for exactly 3 seconds, looking down, not helping him up, not checking if he was hurt, just looking. Then she walked away, disappearing from the frame before Louis even started to get up. Thornton stopped the playback. The room was completely silent. Anne's voice, when she finally spoke, was deadly calm. "I want copies of that footage secured immediately. Multiple backups. Encrypted. Commander, who else has access to this system?" "The security office staff, ma'am. And the Royal Communications team has administrative access for technical purposes. I want the original file locked down. No one deletes anything. No one edits anything. Is that clear?" "Crystal clear, ma'am." William was still staring at the frozen screen. She grabbed him. Before she hit him, she physically grabbed my son. His voice was very quiet, very controlled. Barrett had heard that tone before, in officers, right before they made battlefield decisions that would change everything. How long has this been going on? Anne looked at him. What do you mean? I mean, this felt practiced, calculated, like she's done it before. William turned to Thornton. I want every incident report involving Camilla and any of the children for the past 18 months. Every complaint, every concern raised by staff, everything. Thornton hesitated. Sir, those records would be sensitive. Some might involve the king directly. And, Commander, William's voice cut through the room like a whip. My son was just assaulted on camera by my stepmother. I am asking you, as the Prince of Wales and as Lewis's father, to provide me with information about potential prior incidents. Are you refusing? Thornton straightened. No, sir. I'll have the files compiled within the hour. Kate hadn't spoken since the video started. She was still holding William's hand, but her other hand was pressed against her mouth. When she finally lowered it, her voice was shaking. I want her away from my children. All of them. George, Charlotte, Lewis. I don't care what protocols we have to change. I don't care what the king says. She doesn't come near them again. Anne nodded. Agreed, and I'll make that clear to Charles when he arrives. Barrett's radio crackled. It was Mitchell. Sergeant, you need to come back to the security office. Now. The Queen Consort is demanding to speak with the king. She's refusing to remain in the room and threatening to leave. Barrett looked at Anne. She nodded. Go. If she tries to leave, you have my authority to prevent it. Minimum necessary force. But don't let her walk out. Barrett moved quickly through the corridors. When he reached the security office, he could hear Camilla's voice through the door before he even opened it. Wright was standing post, his face carefully neutral. Inside, Camilla was on her feet, pointing at Mitchell. You have no authority to keep me here. None. I am the Queen Consort of England. I demand to speak with my husband immediately. Mitchell's voice was level. Ma'am, you'll have that opportunity when His Majesty arrives. Until then, we've been asked to take your statement about the incident. There was no incident, Camilla's voice rose. There was a correction of an insolent child. That is my right. My duty, even. These children need discipline. They need structure. William and Catherine are far too permissive. Barrett stepped inside. Ma'am, we have security footage of the encounter. Would you like to review it before giving your statement? Camilla's face went very still. For just a moment, genuine fear flickered across her features. Then it was gone, replaced by cold calculation. Security footage can be manipulated, edited. I'm sure Anne has already seen to that. The footage is time-stamped and encrypted, ma'am. It hasn't been altered. I want my lawyer. Mitchell and Barrett exchanged glances. This was moving into territory way beyond their training. Barrett pulled out his radio. Commander Thornton, the Queen Consort is requesting legal counsel. How should we proceed? Thornton's response was immediate. Noted. Stand by. They stood in silence. Camilla sat down again, her posture rigid. She wasn't looking at them anymore. She was staring at the wall, her mind clearly racing. Barrett could see it in her eyes. She was planning, strategizing, trying to figure out how to control this situation. Minutes ticked by. Then Barrett's radio crackled again. All stations. His Majesty the King has arrived at the palace. He's proceeding directly to the East Wing. Camilla stood up immediately. I want to see my husband. Now. Ma'am, I don't have authorization to... The door opened. Commander Thornton entered, followed by King Charles. The king looked exhausted. He'd clearly travelled fast, probably by helicopter from Scotland. His tie was loosened, his face was drawn, but his eyes were sharp, taking in the scene with immediate comprehension. Leave us, he said quietly. Thornton nodded. Sir, Princess Anne requested that... I said leave us, Commander. I need to speak with my wife privately. Barrett and Mitchell filed out. The door closed behind them. They took up positions in the corridor, far enough away to give privacy, but close enough to respond if needed. Barrett could hear voices through the door. Camilla's rising in pitch. Charles's staying low, measured. This was going to get worse before it got better. The files Commander Thornton had pulled arrived while Charles and Camilla were still behind closed doors. Barrett wasn't supposed to see them, but when Thornton opened the folder in the corridor, sorting through pages to present to William, Barrett caught glimpses, enough to make his blood run cold. Incident report from 8 months ago. Princess Charlotte in tears after a private conversation with the Queen Consort. Staff member reported hearing raised voices. No formal complaint filed. Incident report from 6 months ago. Prince George requesting not to attend a family dinner. When asked why, he said he didn't want to be alone with Mrs. Camilla. Parents assumed the normal child-adult tension. No follow-up. Incident report from 4 months ago. Anonymous staff complaint about the Queen Consort's treatment of junior royals. Described her as inappropriately harsh and verbally aggressive. Complaint dismissed as hearsay. There were more, at least a dozen. Small things. Individually, they might look like nothing. Personality conflicts. Generational differences in parenting styles. But together, they painted a picture that made Barrett's stomach turn. This wasn't a one-time loss of control. This was a pattern. Thornton saw Barrett looking. He didn't say anything, just closed the folder and walked away to deliver it to William. But the message was clear. They'd all missed it. All the small signs, all the red flags. Because who questions the Queen Consort? The door to the security office opened. Charles emerged. His face was ashen. He looked at Thornton. My wife will be departing for Clarence House. She'll remain there until we can address this situation properly. She is not, I repeat, not to be treated as a detainee. Is that understood? Thornton's voice was carefully neutral. Sir, Princess Anne gave explicit orders that I am the king, Commander, and I'm telling you that my wife will not be detained in Buckingham Palace like a common criminal. Arrange transport, immediately. Yes, sir. Charles turned to Barrett. You witnessed the incident, I'm told. Yes, sir. What exactly did you see? Barrett went through it again. Every detail. Charles listened without interrupting, but Barrett could see his jaw tightening with each sentence. When Barrett finished, Charles was quiet for a long moment. And the footage? You've seen it? Yes, sir. Is it as clear as they're telling me? Barrett met his eyes. It's very clear, sir. There's no ambiguity about what happened. Charles closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, he looked 10 years older. I see. Thank you, Sergeant. You're dismissed. Barrett started to leave, but Charles spoke again. Sergeant Barrett, you followed your orders. You did your duty. I want you to know that, regardless of what happens next, you acted correctly. That child is safe because you didn't hesitate. His voice cracked slightly on the word child. Thank you. Barrett nodded. He didn't trust himself to speak. He walked away, leaving the king standing alone in the corridor. Behind him, he heard Camilla emerge from the security office. Her voice was low, speaking to Charles. Barrett couldn't make out the words, but the tone was pleading, desperate. Charles's response was too quiet to hear. 20 minutes later, a car pulled up to a side entrance. Camilla was escorted out by Thornton and 2 guards. She walked with her head high, her face composed. But Barrett, watching from a window, could see her hands shaking. She got into the car without looking back. The door closed. The car pulled away. Princess Anne appeared beside Barrett at the window. She watched the car disappear through the palace gates. She'll be back, Anne said quietly. Charles won't keep her away long. He never does. Ma'am, those incident reports. I know. I've seen them. Anne's voice was bitter. We all missed it. We saw the signs, and we explained them away because it was easier than confronting the king's wife. Easier than admitting we'd let a bully into the heart of this family. Barrett turned to face her. What happens now? Now we document everything. We build a case that even Charles can't ignore. And we make absolutely certain that woman never has unsupervised access to those children again. Anne looked at him. You started something today, Sergeant, by calling that Code Amber, by following through. You opened a door we can't close. I hope you understand that. I do, ma'am. Good. Because this is far from over. The real fight is just beginning. She was right. Barrett would learn that over the following hours. Because while Camilla was being driven to Clarence's house, someone was making phone calls. Someone was reaching out to media contacts. Someone was preparing to spin this incident into something completely different. A story about an overzealous guard, about Princess Anne's jealousy, about William and Catherine's inability to control their spoiled children. The battle for the truth had started, and Barrett was right in the middle of it, whether he wanted to be or not. What he didn't know yet was that the evidence they'd need would come from the most unlikely source. A discovery that would change everything they thought they knew about Camilla's time in the palace. That discovery was waiting in a locked drawer in her private office, and finding it would put Barrett in the most dangerous position of his entire career. But that was still hours away. Right now, he had a statement to write, and every word of it had to be perfect, because he knew, with absolute certainty, that every single word would be scrutinized, picked apart, used as ammunition in a war he'd never intended to start. Barrett spent the next 2 hours in an administrative office, writing his statement. Every sentence felt like walking through a minefield. He described what he saw, what he heard, the exact position of Louis when he fell, the red mark that appeared on his cheek, the sound of the impact. He left nothing out, but he also added nothing. Just facts. Cold, clinical facts that somehow felt inadequate to describe what had actually happened in that corridor. Mitchell brought him coffee around 7 in the evening. You doing all right? Define all right. Barrett rubbed his eyes. I just helped us detain the Queen Consort, so my career is either over or about to get very complicated. You did the right thing. I know. Doesn't make it easier. Mitchell sat down across from him. Commander Thornton wants to see you when you're done with that. Something about Camilla's office. Barrett looked up. Her office? What about it? Don't know, but he specifically asked for you. Said you're the only one with clean hands in this whole thing. Whatever that means. 20 minutes later, Barrett was standing outside Camilla's private office in the West Wing. Thornton was there, with a locksmith and 2 other guards Barrett didn't recognize. They looked like serious men, the kind who usually handled sensitive investigations involving classified materials or threats to national security. Thornton saw Barrett's expression. Relax. This is legitimate. Princess Anne petitioned the king for access to the Queen Consort's private papers. She argued that given the pattern of incidents involving the children, we need to understand if there's been any documentation of her interactions with them. Any notes, journals, correspondence that might shed light on her mindset. And the king agreed. Eventually, after William showed him those incident reports, after he watched that security footage 3 more times, Thornton's voice was grim. He's in a bad place right now. I've never seen him like this. But he signed the authorization. The locksmith finished with the door. It swung open to reveal an elegant office, decorated in cream and gold. Everything was immaculate, organized, not a paper out of place. Barrett felt immediately uncomfortable. This felt like a violation, even with authorization. What exactly are we looking for? He asked. Anything that references the children, anything that shows intent or pattern. Journals, letters, notes. Thornton moved to the desk. You take the filing cabinets. Mitchell, you're on the bookshelf. Look for anything tucked between books or behind them. Barrett approached the filing cabinet. It was locked, but the locksmith made quick work of it. Inside were dozens of folders, meticulously labelled. Most were mundane. Correspondence with charities, schedules, event planning documents. But then Barrett's hand landed on a folder, labelled simply, Family Matters. He pulled it out. Inside were letters, handwritten, not to anyone. These were unsent letters, drafts maybe, or just thoughts put to paper. Barrett started reading. His hands began to shake. Commander, you need to see this. Thornton came over. Barrett handed him the first letter. It was dated 6 months earlier, addressed to no one. The handwriting was elegant, controlled, but the content was venomous. These children are being ruined by permissive parenting. William lacks his father's backbone. Catherine is too focused on being liked to properly discipline. George will grow up entitled and weak. Charlotte is manipulative and cunning. Louis is the worst of all, combining his mother's need for attention with his father's stubborn streak. Someone must teach them proper respect before it's too late. Charles won't intervene. He never does. So it falls to me. Thornton read it twice. Keep looking. Barrett found more, letter after letter. Some were simple observations, complaints about the children's behavior, but others were darker, plans, strategies for isolating the children from their parents' influence, ideas for corrective measures that made Barrett's skin crawl. Nothing explicitly violent, but the intent was clear. Camilla saw the children as problems to be solved, obstacles to be controlled. One letter, dated just 3 weeks earlier, stopped Barrett cold. Louis disrespected me again today at luncheon, spoke over me, contradicted me in front of guests. William and Catherine said nothing, just smiled indulgently, as if his rudeness was charming. I wanted to strike him then, to show him that actions have consequences. But there were too many witnesses. I must wait for a better opportunity, private, where I can make my point clearly without interference. Barrett felt sick. This wasn't a momentary loss of control. This was premeditated. She'd been planning it, waiting for her chance. Commander! Mitchell had found something too. A small leather journal hidden behind a row of books on royal protocol. Inside were daily entries, short, clinical, but devastating. March 12th. Charlotte cried when I corrected her table manners. Too sensitive. Must toughen up. April 3rd. George avoided me at tea, Catherine clearly poisoning him against me. May 18th. Louis responded rudely when I asked him to fetch my reading glasses. Grabbed his arm to emphasize point. He pulled away. Insolent. May 18th. 2 months before today. She'd grabbed Louis before, put her hands on him, and no one had known. Thornton was on his phone. Princess Anne, it's Thornton. We've found documents, letters, a journal. You need to see these immediately. He listened for a moment. Yes, ma'am. We'll secure everything and bring it to you. They boxed up the letters, the journal, and several other documents that referenced the children. Barrett felt like he was handling explosives. This evidence was devastating. It proved intent. It proved a pattern of escalating behavior. It proved that what happened today wasn't an isolated incident, but the culmination of months of building resentment and planned confrontation. As they were leaving, Barrett noticed something. A desk drawer, partially hidden under the desk itself. Easy to miss. He knelt down, pulled it open. Inside was a single envelope, sealed. No address, no name. Just sealed. Something made him pick it up. Commander, there's one more thing. Thornton looked at the envelope. Open it. Barrett broke the seal. Inside was a letter. This one typed and formatted formally. It was addressed to King Charles, dated today. Written, Barrett realized with growing horror, before the incident with Louis. My darling Charles, I write this, knowing you may never understand my position. The children are out of control. Their parents refuse to see it. Someone must take action. Today, I will make clear to Louis that his behavior is unacceptable. I will use whatever means necessary to ensure he understands the consequences of disrespect. I know you may disapprove, but I'm doing this for the good of the family, for the future of the monarchy. These children must learn discipline, and if their parents won't provide it, I must. Your devoted wife, C. She'd written a confession. Before she'd even struck Louis, she'd documented her intent to do exactly what she did. Barrett couldn't process it. Why would anyone write this down? Thornton took the letter with shaking hands. She wanted insurance. If things went badly, she could show Charles she'd warned him. Prove she was acting in what she believed were the family's best interests, not out of malice. But it proves premeditation. Exactly. Thornton carefully placed the letter with the other evidence. This changes everything. They carried the boxes back to the East Wing. Princess Anne was waiting in the same office where they'd watched the security footage. William and Kate were there too. Louis had been taken back to their private apartments by his nanny, away from all of this. Charlotte and George were with him, probably confused about why everything felt so tense today. Anne went through the documents methodically. Her face showed nothing, but her hands tightened on each page as she read. William looked over her shoulder, his expression darkening with every letter. Kate sat very still, her arms wrapped around herself. When Anne finished, she looked at Barrett. "Sergeant, you found these?" "Yes, ma'am, in her private office, the filing cabinet and desk drawer." "And the envelope, the sealed one?" "In a hidden drawer. It looked like she'd placed it there deliberately, maybe planning to give it to the king later." Anne nodded slowly. She wanted leverage, documentation that she'd tried to warn Charles, that she was acting out of concern for the family, not personal animosity. She looked at William. "This is enough. More than enough." William's voice was hollow. "She planned it. She wrote down that she was going to hurt Louis, and then she did it. We need to show this to father," Anne said. "Tonight, before Camilla has time to build her defense. He won't want to see it." William stood, started pacing. "He'll say we're persecuting her, that we're exaggerating, that... Then we make him see it." Anne's voice cut through his spiral. "We present the evidence, all of it, the footage, the witness statements, these letters, and we make it clear that this is not negotiable. Camilla stays away from the children, or we go public." Kate spoke for the first time. "We can't go public. The media would tear the family apart." "Then Charles makes the choice." Anne's eyes were hard. Protect his wife or protect his grandchildren. He can't have both. Barrett felt like he was watching history unfold in real time. This wasn't just a family dispute. This was a constitutional crisis in microcosm. The king's wife versus the future king's children. No good answer, no clean resolution. But Anne had been right about one thing. Barrett had opened a door by calling that Code Amber, and now it couldn't be closed. The meeting with King Charles happened at 9 that evening. Barrett wasn't present for it, but he heard about it later from Thornton. The king had tried to defend Camilla, tried to explain away the letters as venting, frustration, not serious intent. But when William placed that final letter on the table, the one written, that very morning, Charles had gone silent. He'd read it 3 times. Then he'd asked to be left alone. When they returned an hour later, he'd aged a decade. His decision was simple and devastating. Camilla would not return to Buckingham Palace. She would remain at Clarence House indefinitely. She would have no unsupervised contact with any of the grandchildren. She would attend only mandatory public events, and even then, with strict protocols about her interactions with the children. And She would seek private counseling, though Charles refused to call it what it was: anger management, therapy for someone who'd proven they couldn't control themselves around children. It wasn't enough. Anne had pushed for more. William had wanted her removed from public duties entirely, but Charles wouldn't go that far. She was still his wife, still the Queen Consort, still the woman he'd loved enough to tear his first marriage apart. Some compromises, Barrett thought, weren't really compromises at all. They were just postponing the inevitable. 3 days later, Barrett was called to Princess Anne's office. He'd expected a debriefing, maybe a commendation for handling the situation. What he got was different. Anne stood when he entered. "Sergeant Barrett, I want to thank you personally. Not as the Princess Royal, but as Louis's great-aunt. You protected a child when it would have been easier to look away, when your career was on the line. That takes courage." "I just followed protocol, ma'am." "No, you followed your conscience. Protocol would have been reporting the incident and waiting for senior officers to respond. You intervened immediately. You made a choice." She paused. "I want you to know that choice has been noted. You'll be receiving a private commendation. Nothing public, but it will be in your file. And if you ever need anything, you have my direct support." Barrett didn't know what to say. "Thank you, Mum. How is he?" Kate's voice came from the doorway. She'd entered quietly, and now she approached Barrett with the kind of direct intensity that made him stand straighter. "Louis, he keeps asking about you, the guard who helped him. He's asking about me? You were there. You saw what happened. You believed him." Kate's eyes were bright. "In his mind, you're a hero, and honestly, in mine too." Barrett felt in his throat tighten. "I'm glad he's all right. He will be, eventually." Kate glanced at Anne. "We're being more careful now, more vigilant. We won't miss the signs again." After they dismissed him, Barrett walked back through the palace corridors. They looked the same as they had 4 days ago, but everything felt different. The weight of what had happened, what had almost been covered up, what might still be covered up, pressed down on him. He thought about Louis, 7 years old, trying to be brave, trying not to cry, that red mark on his face. He thought about Camilla's letters, the cold calculation, the escalating resentment, the premeditated violence. He thought about King Charles, forced to choose between his wife and his grandchildren, a choice that would haunt him for the rest of his reign. And he thought about his own choice. At that split second in the corridor, when he decided to press the transmit button on his radio, to call Code Amber, to start the chain of events that had torn open wounds the royal family might never fully heal. Had he done the right thing? Yes, without question. Would there be consequences? Absolutely. Already were. He'd heard the whispers. Some staff thought he'd overstepped, that he'd caused unnecessary drama, that he'd been manipulated by Princess Anne's vendetta against Camilla. But when he closed his eyes, he saw Louis on that marble floor, and he knew he'd make the same choice again, every single time. The real question was what came next. Camilla was still the Queen Consort. She still had Charles's ear, his trust, his love. These restrictions, these protocols, how long would they last? How long before Charles convinced himself his wife deserved another chance? How long before the children were at risk again? Barrett didn't have those answers. Nobody did. All he knew was that for now, tonight, Louis and Charlotte and George were safe. And tomorrow, he'd be standing post again, watching, waiting, ready to make the same impossible choice if it came to that. Because that's what guards do. They protect, even when it cost them everything. If this story showed you something about Royal Guards you didn't know, make sure you're subscribed to Royal Guard Files. We share these untold stories from inside the palace every single day. Drop a comment below. If you were Sergeant Barrett in that corridor, Would you have made the same call? Would you have detained the Queen Consort to protect a child, knowing it could end your career? We'll see you in the next one.